I have been married to my husband for 5 years, but we have no children. In order to have a son, he suggested that I travel to the Medicine King Valley, thousands of miles away, to seek medical treatment. On the way back to the mansion, I heard a faint cry of a baby in a dilapidated temple by the official road. I brought him back to the mansion to raise, and named him Pei Jinyu. For 20 years, I've treated him as my own, utilizing the military merits and connections of my entire Shen family to pave a path to success for him. But on the day he was promoted and ennobled, becoming the youngest Grand Secretary, my health deteriorated day by day. As I lay dying, like a lamp running out of oil, I overheard a conversation between him and my husband, Pei Wenshuan, and learned that this child was actually born to a courtesan my husband had been keeping. Their scheme to find him was merely to exploit the power of my Shen family and pave the way for his advancement. With endless hatred and resentment, I breathed my last. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the carriage on the way back to the manor from the Medicine King Valley. It was still that dilapidated temple, still that familiar cry of an infant. There was no trace of pity in my eyes, and I coldly instructed the personal guard beside me, send him to the pleasure house. Doesn't she love having others raise her son? Then let the madam of the pleasure house teach him well how to serve men. The wheels rolled on, crushing my muddled consciousness. Madam, listen, it sounds like a child is crying in the dilapidated temple. The voice of my guard, Shen Zhong, completely pulled me back to reality. I realized that I had truly been reborn. The hand I used to lift the carriage curtain trembled slightly, not from excitement, but from the bone-deep hatred. Sure enough, in the corner of the dilapidated temple, an infant in swaddling clothes was crying loudly. I ordered Shen Zhong to put the child onto the carriage. The swaddling clothes were still old and worn, and inside was still hidden that crookedly written blood letter that read, "Too poor to raise, hoping a kind person will take in." In my previous life, seeing this letter, I only felt heartache, but now looking at it again, I only feel irony. Back to the manor, Shen Zhong asked in a low voice, "Go home?" No, I lowered the carriage curtain, my voice as cold as ice. Change course, to the general's residence. When my father heard about my experiences in my previous life, he was so angry that he immediately pulled the Longquan sword hanging on the wall. The old general, a veteran of countless battles, glared with his tiger eyes. What is the Pei family? A pedantic scholar dares to plot against the Shen family like this. Does he think there is no one in the Shen family? This old man will immediately call up the troops and flatten his Ministry of Revenue. My mother also raised her eyebrows and picked up the horsewhip beside her. Don't worry, husband, you go chop up that ungrateful Pei Wenshuan, and I'll go tear up that shameless lowly singer, to dare bully my Nyan like this. Do you really think the Shen family's spears are no longer sharp? I grabbed my furious parents with each hand and revealed the vicious plan in my heart. Father, mother, killing them directly is too easy on them. I want them to watch with their own eyes as the things they cherish most turn into a pile of mud in their own hands. After hearing my plan, Father sheathed his sword, pondered for a long while, and then heavily patted my shoulder. Good, worthy of being a daughter of the Shen family. Let's do it this way. Mother immediately took action, sending confidants to the estates outside the city to find suitable male infants for me. Meanwhile, Shen Zhong expressionlessly picked up the crying infant and strode towards the south of the city. There lay the most extravagant and decadent, yet also the most depraved brothels of the capital. I gave the madam 200 taels of silver, and she smiled so hard that all the wrinkles on her face piled up together, as she pinched her orchid fingers and guaranteed, "Rest assured, madam, this child is born fair and tender. Given time, he will surely become the top attraction in my establishment. I will certainly train him well, ensuring he learns all the skills to serve people properly." After arranging everything, I finally returned to the minister's residence. Exhausted, Unexpectedly, Pei Wenshuan was waiting for me at the door. Seeing that Shenzhong and I had our hands empty, a fleeting hint of anxiety flashed in his eyes, and he quickly came up to greet me. Nyan Nyan, you seem to be back a little late today. Was the journey smooth? The travel was tiring, and I'm a bit weary. I'll go back to my room to rest. I waved my hand, feigning exhaustion, and brushed past him. Seeing that I didn't mention the child, Pei Wenshuan was so anxious that the veins on his forehead were almost popping out. He turned and went to the stables, and after a moment, he got the story from the coachman. He strode into my bedroom, no longer able to maintain his gentle and refined demeanor. Nyan Nyan, the driver told me you picked up a baby on the road. Where is the child? He tried to appear calm, but his slightly trembling fingertips had already betrayed his inner turmoil. Anxious, aren't you? Good, I hope it kills you. I sneered inwardly, but my face remained calm. Oh, that child. I sent them to my mother's home. Upon hearing this, Pei Wenshuan's tightly clenched sleeves betrayed his nervousness. He pressed further, asking, you picked up a child. Why didn't you bring them back to the manor for me to see? Never mind. I'll accompany you back to the general's residence tomorrow to see the child you picked up. I picked up my teacup, gently blowing on the floating foam, deliberately teasing him. No need, I'm not feeling well, so I won't be returning to my parents' home these days. Besides, there's no need for you to go see. The wet nurse who serves by my mother's side saw that the child was born strong and healthy, and wanted to take him back to raise for her eldest son. So I agreed. Hearing that I had given his precious son to a servant, Pei Wenshuan's face instantly turned ashen. He could no longer restrain himself, his voice suddenly rising. How could you give the child away so casually? What if his biological parents come looking for him? You must quickly get the child back. That would be the proper thing to do. I put down the teacup and looked directly at him, my eyes cold. Husband, why are you so concerned about an abandoned baby you don't even know? Pei Wenshuan was taken aback by my gaze, and only then did he realize he had lost his composure. He immediately composed himself, returning to his usual gentle demeanor, and explained, I'm just worried that the child's biological parents will come looking for him. If they find out that we actually entrusted the child to a servant to raise, wouldn't that damage the reputation of my minister's residence? I chuckled softly. Husband, you worry too much. There was a blood letter left in the child's swaddling clothes, stating that his parents were poor and unable to raise him, so they abandoned him in a dilapidated temple, with no intention of retrieving him. Pei Wenshuan, afraid that his bastard child would be mistreated in the hands of a servant, continued to pester me relentlessly. Nyan Nyan, why don't we adopt this child? You encountered him upon your return from the Medicine King Valley. Perhaps this is a blessing from heaven for our many years of childlessness, a special fate sent to us. I pretended to ponder, sighed softly, and then said generously, since my husband is so fond of that child and wishes to raise him, I have no objections. Upon hearing this, Pei Wen's tightly furrowed brows finally relaxed, and a faint, smug smile crept onto his lips, but my next words plunged him into an icy abyss. Unfortunately, the wet nurse's husband is a centurion stationed at the border in Yunju. Mother has already granted her permission to take the child to Yunju to reunite with her husband. Judging by the time, I'm afraid she's already 100 miles outside the city. What did you say? The road to Yunju is treacherous, thousands of miles away. How can an infant withstand such hardship? Pei Wenshuan was so agitated that his voice cracked. Looking as if he wanted to sprout wings and fly to Yunju to snatch the child back immediately, I naturally wanted to help him along, so I followed his lead and continued, if you're really worried, my husband, why not prepare a horse and leave the city now? Maybe you can still catch up, having obtained my permission. Pei Wenshuan rushed out without looking back. Watching his hurried departure, Shenzhong's figure appeared behind me like a ghost, reporting in a low voice, "Madam, those few best steeds in the Ministry of Revenue stables, unfortunately, sprained their front hooves while being fed just now. If he wants to chase, I'm afraid he can only ride those old cart horses." After Shenzong finished speaking, the corners of his mouth curled into a cold, hard arc. The pent-up resentment of 2 lifetimes. Finally, at this moment, I laughed heartily. Pei Wenxuan was too impatient and actually rode that old cart-pulling horse out of the city all by himself. Traveling on the desolate official road, the old horse was already exhausted, and Pei Wenxuan urged it on so urgently that it foamed at the mouth before it had gone 10 miles and could no longer run. Seeing the horse running slower and slower, Pei Wenxuan became exasperated and whipped the horse's back fiercely. The old horse was in pain and extremely tired, and immediately refused to go on. It stood up on its hind legs, let out a long neigh, and threw Pei Wenxuan off violently. As luck would have it, Pei Wenxuan flew off the horse and crashed into a crooked old locust tree, disturbing the wasps nesting in the tree hollow. The swarm of bees was stimulated and poured out of the nest with a buzz. Surrounding him, Pei Wenxuan was dizzy from the impact. His ribs felt like they were broken, and he was stung all over his head by the swarm of bees. When he rolled down from the tree, his face landed right in a pile of fresh dung left by some unknown animal. Filth plastered his face, clogging his mouth and nose. This prevented him from even crying for help, and he could only twitch on the ground, on the verge of death. Just as he was on his last breath, he was saved by the personal guard my father sent to protect him in secret. It really is true what they say. A scourge lives for 1,000 years. The next day, the Imperial Guards sent Pei Wenxuan, covered in wounds and reeking of stench, back to the minister's mansion. I suppressed my laughter and ordered Shenzong to give the guards 100 taels of silver as a reward, then had the servants carry Pei Wenxuan into the bedroom. In the evening, Pei Wenxuan finally woke up. Speaking opens his mouth, and the pain involves all his internal organs. The doctor who treated him was Zhong Bo, the military doctor of my Shen family. Having received my order, Zhong Bo used his unique technique, seemingly to heal him, but in reality, he amplified the pain of being attacked by bee venom. Under such severe pain, he still clung to life, grasping my hand, urging me to bring that child back without fail. I intended to bring that child back anyway, so, with tears in my eyes, I nodded in agreement. "Rest assured, my husband, I will send word to the nanny to send the child back, but Yunju is far away, and a round trip will take at least a month." With my assurance, Pei Wenxuan's anxious heart finally settled down a little. I thought to myself, a month from now, will you still recognize your precious son? I'm really looking forward to it. 1 month later, I brought back from my parents' home an abandoned baby that my mother had found for me. Pei Wenxuan, barely holding on despite his illness, struggled to hold the child. I refused, saying that his injuries had not yet healed and that he might startle the baby. Pei Wenxuan didn't say anything at the time, but in the evening, he dismissed all the servants and quietly sneaked into the child's residence, lifting the swaddling clothes to examine the soles of the child's feet. When he saw the red mole on the sole of the foot, which I had asked my mother to mark with cinnabar, he breathed a long sigh of relief, his eyes and brows full of triumphant smiles. He contentedly placed the child back in the cradle. He murmured to himself, "My son, you must grow up quickly, exhaust the power of that poisonous woman's family, and swallow her dowry, so that our family of 3 can reunite soon." I hid behind the screen, taking it all in. I want to see, in this reversed life, how it feels for me to use the Shangshu Manor's money to raise my Shen family's son. When you finally learn the truth, what will you feel? After Pei Wenxuan confirmed the child's identity, and entrusted the child to my care with peace of mind, seeing that I was taking such good care of the child, making him fair and chubby, the pride hidden in his eyes grew even stronger. This day, I was amusing Pei Anian with an ivory rattledrum, the name I had given the child. As my son and I were playing happily, Shenzhong came in to inform me that my mother-in-law, the old lady of the Ministry of Revenue, who was always devoted to Buddhism, had returned to the mansion from the temple outside the city. My mother-in-law had left the mansion 2 months ago, saying she was going to the temple to pray for blessings for the Pei family. However, with the memories of my past life, I knew clearly that my mother-in-law had been away from the mansion for the past 2 months to take care of Pei Wenshuan's mistress, the singing girl Yun Jiao, and her safe childbirth in the villa south of the city. Only today, after Yun Jiao had completed her postpartum confinement, did she return to the mansion contentedly. I put down the rattledrum and got up to pay my respects to my mother-in-law at the Hall of Pine and Crane. I hadn't even reached the courtyard gate yet. From inside came a sharp, shrewish voice. Heavens! Where are my Qinghua plum vases from the previous dynasty, the glazed cups from the western regions, the cloud brocade bedding woven in Jiangnan, and that set of imperial bestowed red gold kingfisher feather headdress? Where did they all go? The voice was none other than my mother-in-law's. As for the long list of rare and precious items she mentioned, they were all part of the dowry I brought into the Pei family back then. The first day I was reborn, Shenzhong had already led my men to move all my dowry, not even a needle or thread left behind, back into my private treasury. When Pei Wenshuan saw me arrive, he shamelessly questioned me. How are you managing the household? Mother has only been away from the residence for 2 months. And yet the valuable items in the courtyard have disappeared. You need to give your mother an explanation immediately. My eyes were cold as I slowly opened my mouth. What explanation do I need to give for taking back my dowry? Is your Ministry of Revenue so desperately poor that you would even embezzle your daughter-in-law's dowry? My mother-in-law's eyes were venomous as she pointed at me with her finger adorned with a jade nail guard, and scolded, "What's yours? You are a woman of the Pei family. Since you married into the Pei family, your dowry naturally belongs to the Pei family. Hurry up and move all my treasures back, or I won't spare you." I couldn't be bothered to argue with this shameless mother and son. I took out my father's great general command from my sleeve and handed it to Shenzhong. Go to the Jingzhou Prefecture Yamen and ask the prefecture governor to uphold justice for me. I want to see what the consequences will be for your Ministry of Revenue household for violating the laws of the Great Zhou and seizing your daughter-in-law's dowry. The Great Zhou dynasty's laws clearly stipulate that if a woman's dowry is seized, the government will forcibly recover the property and impose a penalty of 30 strokes of the cane. As a Grand Secretariat, Pei Wenshuan was well aware of this. If this matter blows up, this civil official, is guaranteed to taste the pain of a flowery backside. He watched Shenzhong stride out the door, his voice cracked with anxiety. "Stop, you're not allowed to go. Get back here to me at once." Shenzhong turned a deaf ear and disappeared directly out the courtyard gate. Pei Wenshuan ordered his attendants to quickly give chase. My mother-in-law was still cursing and grumbling beside me, saying I was unfilial and disobedient to my husband. The noise gave Pei Wenshuan a splitting headache. "Mother, enough, aren't there enough things in the house for you? Why do you have to take Nyan Nyan's dowry? If this gets out, will I have any face left?" Pei Wenshuan roared, startling his mother-in-law. Then he turned to me, a hint of guilt on his face. "It's my fault. I blamed you without asking the reason just now. Quickly ask Shenzhong to come back. If this matter blows up, you, as my wife, will also lose face." The words had just fallen. Pei Wenshuan's attendant, whom he had just sent out, ran back in a panic and reported, "Sir, something terrible has happened." Shenzhong rode to the capital prefecture, and I couldn't stop him. Pei Wen gritted his teeth and kicked the attendant to the ground. "You're useless. Couldn't you have ridden a horse to chase after him?" The duties of the governor of the capital prefecture were onerous, so he sent his trusted deputy governor, my own brother. Shin Tsungwoo, to handle the matter of my mother-in-law's encroachment on my dowry. Shin Tsungwoo was a well-known living Yama in the capital, always impartial and unyielding, showing no favoritism even to his own family. When Pei Wenshuan saw who it was, his face looked as if he had swallowed a fly. He knew very well that if Shin Tsungwoo were to handle this matter, within half a day, his father, mother, and even the entire court would know about the scandal of his Shangshu manor embezzling my Shin family's dowry. Pei Wenshuan forced a smile. Attempting to gloss over the matter with a table of good wine and dishes, Shin Tsungwoo rolled his eyes at him in annoyance. Taking the dowry list from Shinjong, I swaggered around the minister's mansion with a troop of soldiers, personally taking inventory of my dowry for me. This, and this. Move them all away for me. An hour later, from Pei Wenshuan's study and my mother-in-law's vault. Every single piece of my dowry that I had missed before and that they had embezzled was moved back to my private vault. Furthermore, Shin Tsungwoo even tapped the table, coldly reprimanding Pei Wenshuan. My mother-in-law comes from a merchant background, is short-sighted, and loves money as if it were her life. Immediately, she started acting like a shrew, throwing herself on the ground and pointing at my brother, Shin Tsungwoo, yelling, "You bandit, what right do you have to move my treasures? Bring them back to me now. These treasures are mine once they enter the Pei family. What business is it of yours, an outsider, to interfere? Get out of here." Shin Tsungwoo smiled contemptuously, his expression serious as he said, "Seizing a daughter-in-law's dowry is punishable by 30 strokes according to the law. Insulting an official of the court warrants 20 slaps to the face. Considering your age, I will have your son, Pei Wenshuan, take the punishment in your stead." When the mother-in-law heard that Pei Wenshuan was going to be punished, she craned her neck and shouted, "My son is a grand academician of the inner cabinet, a future grand secretary. How dare you punish him?" Hearing her words, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. The Pei family once had a prime minister in their ancestry, but has since declined. Pei Wenshuan was able to secure the position of Grand Academician of the Pavilion entirely because my father was pulling strings for him behind the scenes. The emperor has repeatedly complained to my father about his being stubborn, inflexible, and unfit for important tasks. If it weren't for the sake of my Shin family, he would have been demoted to some remote and impoverished area long ago. Only my mother-in-law can't see clearly and actually treats this official position as a protective charm. Pei Wenshuan blinked at me, seeking help, but I pretended not to see. I let the soldiers hold him down and thoroughly beat him with 30 strokes. The execution ended. Pei Wenshuan, this frail scholar, was beaten until his skin was torn and bleeding, and his recently healed wounds all burst open. As he was carried away, the look in his eyes as he stared at me was full of resentment. The next day, at my instruction, the scandal of the minister's household seizing my dowry and the Imperial Academy scholar Pei Wenshuan taking punishment on behalf of his mother spread throughout the capital. Upon hearing this, the emperor actually sent 10 carts of rewards to me, saying it was to appease the grievances I had suffered. This operation left Pei Wenshuan unable to vent his anger on me, so he could only lie in bed and smash everything he could in his room. After this incident, Pei Wenshuan changed his strategy and began to treat me even better, showing concern for my well-being and being extremely considerate. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, put all her effort into making things difficult for me in terms of filial piety. Today she complained of chest tightness and asked me to stew the century-old wild ginseng from my dowry to replenish her qi. The next day, she said her liver fire was high and demanded the precious snow lotus seed to clear the heat. If I don't give it, rumors will surely spread throughout the capital that I, Shin Niannian, am disrespectful to my parents-in-law. I can only obediently hand over the items to my mother-in-law, but the century-old wild ginseng was replaced with ordinary garden ginseng. The snow lotus seed was replaced with ordinary lotus seeds. My mother-in-law ate with relish, thinking she had me figured out, demanding all sorts of precious medicinal materials. Little did she know that everything she asked for was replaced with cheap substitutes. They won't kill her, but she shouldn't think about taking advantage of me. I've given too much. The mother-in-law was getting carried away, actually ordering me to wash her feet during the daily morning and evening greetings. I am the only daughter of a great general, and she wants me to wash the feet of this old hag from a merchant family. It's simply the ultimate humiliation. I can't take it anymore. Immediately, she carried a basin of boiling water into the room. With a stagger, the entire basin of boiling water splashed onto her mother-in-law's well-maintained feet. The scalding caused her to let out a shrill, ghostly scream. While her mother-in-law was recovering from her injuries, my hand trembled uncontrollably again. A bowl of scalding hot medicinal soup was poured over her mouth and nose, choking her so much that she almost coughed up all her internal organs. After that, she never dared to let me serve her up close again. Whenever she saw me, she would tremble and tell me to get away from her. I didn't do as she wished, and still served her morning and evening as usual. In just a few years, he actually cared for her to the point of exhaustion, and she breathed her last. Time flies like a white horse glimpsed through a crack. In the blink of an eye, and Nyan was 10 years old. Pei Wenshuan couldn't wait to take him to the villa in the south of the city to meet his mistress, Yun Jiao. Cloud Dew wept buckets, hugging Anian into her arms, and sobbed, "My child, I am your biological mother." Back then, when I had just given birth to you, that jealous shrew Shen Yan snatched you away from me. That evil woman used your life to threaten your mother, forbidding me from acknowledging you. These past years, your mother has been missing you so much that my heart is breaking, and now I can finally reunite with you. Pei Wenshuan also cooperated by wiping away a tear. Following the nonsense, he said, "Nyana, don't blame your father for only telling you the truth now. Your father was afraid that you were young and immature, and would say the wrong things in front of that wicked woman. Now that you are 10 years old, you can naturally distinguish right from wrong." And Nyan had seen enough of their clumsy performance. She flung Yun Jiao away and said coldly, "Nonsense. Everyone in the capital knows that I am an abandoned baby that my mother picked up from a dilapidated temple. You keep claiming that I am your biological son. Then why did you abandon me in a dilapidated temple in the first place?" Yun Jiao choked back tears as she argued, "My son, these are all fabrications of that wicked woman. You are the child I carried for 10 months and gave birth to with great difficulty. How could a mother bear to abandon you?" And Nyan remained cold and unmoved. "Shut up. You're lying again. When I was 9 years old, my mother took me to the Jingzhou prefecture to examine the records of my background. I am a formally documented abandoned child, which doesn't match your claim of being snatched away at all. Moreover, I have been with my mother day and night for many years, and I know her character well. She is definitely not the kind of person who would steal other people's children. It is you, father, who is keeping this kind of disreputable woman outside behind mother's back, which is utterly shameless." Upon hearing this, Yun Jiao stopped crying abruptly. She pounded her fists on Pei Wenshuan's chest. "It's all your fault. That bitch Shen Yan has corrupted my son. I told you long ago that Nyana should know the truth at 4 years old. You insisted on waiting until he was 10. And now look, my son won't acknowledge me. I might as well die." Pei Wenshuan embraced Yun Jiao, his heart aching with tenderness. He said to Nyan, "Nyana, you don't need to worry about anything else. All you need to know is that this woman in front of you is your biological mother." Upon hearing this, a crack appeared on Nyan's usually calm face. "I understand. You coveted the power of my mother's family, deliberately abandoning me in a dilapidated temple so that my mother would adopt me. You're trying to take advantage of my mother's lack of male heirs. You're utterly malicious. I refuse to acknowledge you as my insidious and cunning parents." And Nyan ran out crying. and Pei Wenxuan hurriedly chased after her to persuade her, afraid that Nyan would say anything out of turn to me after returning to the residence. On the way back to the residence, Pei Wenxuan repeatedly emphasized that he and Yun Jiao were Nyan's biological parents and that she must not reveal this matter to me. Nyan developed a high fever that night and was delirious with illness. Pei Wenxuan stayed by Nyan's bedside, taking care of her all night without taking off his clothes. Normally, Pei Wen never interfered with taking care of Nyan. His sudden attentiveness aroused my suspicion. 3 days later, Nyan recovered from his illness and quietly came to my courtyard at night. He told me in detail about Pei Wenxuan taking him out of the mansion to see Yun Jiao. At this point, Nyan passed the final test in my heart and became my true son. It also made me realize what a low-quality, ungrateful wretch I had raised in my previous life. I held Nyan in my arms and told him in detail how he had come to my side from the manor outside the city. After telling him everything, Nyan burst into laughter through his tears. Regaining the innocence of a child, Pei Wenxuan saw that everything in the residence was calm and peaceful. He smugly believed that Nyan was already on his and Yun Jiao's side. He was so pleased with himself that he was practically walking on air. The way he looked at me even carried a hint of pity, as if he were looking at prey about to be devoured but unaware of its impending doom. I simply turned a blind eye to this, because his biological son, Pei Jinyu, had officially started receiving guests this year, groveling daily at the feet of those dignitaries, wagging his tail and begging for mercy. Just imagining the scene after Pei Wenxuan and Yun Jiao learned the truth made me glow with excitement. And I even ate an extra bowl of rice for dinner. 6 years later, Pei Wenxuan brought back a 14-year-old girl from outside the manor. He said she was the orphaned daughter of a distant cousin, named Pei Yangran. He wanted to adopt her into our family, so we could have both a son and a daughter, making a complete good family. The girl had a beautiful face and soft, smooth skin. Her eyes were watery and captivating, like peach blossoms on branches in early spring. This girl was none other than the daughter of Pei Wenxuan and Yun Jiao. In the previous life, Pei Wenxuan used this same excuse to get me to agree to adopt Pei Yangran under my name, as my daughter. I didn't agree immediately at the time, only treating her as an ordinary niece and raising her in the mansion. After Pei Yangran entered the mansion, she behaved well and was considerate, serving me attentively. During an outing in the countryside, I was accidentally bitten by a venomous snake. Without a word, she immediately bent down to help me suck out the venomous blood, saving my life. I thought she was gentle and kind, a good child, so after returning to the manor, I agreed to adopt her and make her my daughter. Who knew? She had just become my daughter, when at the Crown Prince's selection banquet, she deliberately slipped and fell into the water, scheming for the Crown Prince to save her, causing a huge scandal and forcing the Crown Prince to take her as a concubine. My elder sister is the current empress, and for my sake, she did not punish her, allowing her to enter the Eastern Palace as a concubine. But she hated me for it, resenting me for not using the Shun family's influence to help her ascend to the position of the Crown Prince's primary wife. The position of Crown Prince's primary wife had already been internally decided to be given to the daughter of the current Prime Minister. She disrupted the conferment banquet that originally belonged to the Prime Minister's daughter. She couldn't see how many precious jewels I spent to quell the Prime Minister's anger. My thoughts returned. I nodded in agreement, allowing Pei Yangran to enter the residence. However, the matter of adoption requires me to observe her manners and upbringing to see if they are up to par before making a decision. Pei Wenxuan said with a face full of pride, "Rest assured. Yanran's upbringing and etiquette were personally taught by the palace's etiquette instructors. Impeccable. It's even a bit of a disservice to her to be our daughter." I replied coldly and irritably, "Your collateral branch of the Pei family is just a bunch of down-and-outs, coming to freeload, yet you speak so loftily. if you feel it's a disservice to her, then send her back immediately." Pei Yangran, who had just been full of arrogance, turned pale upon hearing this. Her eyes welled up with tears as she looked at Pei Wenxuan pitifully. Pei Wenxuan felt a pang of heartache and, uncharacteristically, lost his temper with me. "Shen Nian, she's still a child. How could you say such hurtful things in front of a child?" I snorted coldly, impatiently saying, "I haven't even said the worst of it yet. Just get her out of here. She's an eyesore." I ignored the father and daughter after speaking and turned back to my courtyard, after crying for a while. Pei Yangran still shamelessly stayed in the minister's mansion. The next morning, Pei Yangran came to my courtyard to pay her respects. "Since you've offered yourself up, then I'll just have to put in some effort to discipline you." With a wave of my hand, I laid down the rule that she had to stand in the courtyard under the blazing sun for 2 hours with 10 thick volumes of classics and historical texts balanced on her head. She couldn't even last a quarter of an hour before her eyes started to blur and she reached out to take the books off her head. Shenzhong was quick to react. As soon as Pei Yangran moved, a willow branch soaked in water lashed out at her, making her wince in pain. "Someone like you, claiming impeccable etiquette. You're exaggerating beyond belief. The daughters of noble families wear jade pendants and jewelry to constantly remind themselves to pay attention to their deportment. Maintaining graceful and elegant steps and gestures. Look at you, your jewelry jingles as you walk, and you twist your waist like a water snake. I really don't know where you were taught. Behaving like a courtesan." Pei Yanran's face flushed red from Shenzhong's words, but she didn't dare to retort because I was present. After a day, Pei Yangran was whipped all over. Not a single inch of her skin was unscathed. Pei Wenxuan stormed into my courtyard in anger, wanting to avenge his precious daughter, Shen Nian. "Yangran has only been in the manor for a day, and you've already beaten her to the point of being covered in injuries. Aren't you afraid that outsiders will say you're acrimonious, jealous, and vicious?" I put down the art of war in my hand and looked at him seriously. Then I said sarcastically, "Then let her go back where she came from. A piece of mud that can't be plastered on the wall, can't even stand up straight, and wiggles like a boneless snake when she walks. Is your collateral branch of the Pei family running a brothel, raising such a disgrace? You. Pei Wenxuan was so angry with my words that his face was contorted. "You've been yewing for a long time, but you can't even utter a complete sentence." Losing my patience, I got up and kicked him out. Pei Yangran, however, was quite flexible. After being whipped yesterday, she shamelessly came to my door today, begging me to continue teaching her. Of course, I had to fulfill her wishes. Starting with correcting her posture, she stood under the scorching sun for a full hour. She also had to learn needlework and cooking, which left her delicate hands covered in blisters. The classics, history, philosophy, literature, the Book of Changes, law, arithmetic, poetry, calligraphy, everything was crammed into her head. She was allowed less than 2 hours of sleep a day, and in less than half a month, she became as gaunt as a ghost. Too much to chew, and she couldn't digest it all in 3 months. She achieved nothing, and her porcelain white skin became rough and dark. I finally said to Pei Wenxuan, "You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear." I told him to send Pei Yangran back to the so-called collateral branch as soon as possible and find a suitable marriage for her. This infuriated the father and daughter, and after returning to their room, they smashed the furnishings inside in a frenzy. "Go ahead and smash it. Anyway, I've been reborn. All the expenses of the Ministry of Revenue's residence are now paid entirely from Pei Wenxuan's own salary and the Pei family's ancestral property." Pei Yangran came to the Ministry of Revenue's residence to please me, originally wanting to step on me and climb onto the high branch of the Eastern Palace. After enduring for 3 months, she only earned my disgust and torment in return, seeing that the Crown Prince's selection banquet was approaching. Both she and Pei Wenxuan couldn't sit still. Pei Wenshuan once again brought out his poisonous scheme from his previous life. He invited me to go on an outing outside the city, but I coldly refused. He shamelessly begged in my courtyard for a long time. I slapped him across the face twice and sent him packing. A few days later, a colorful venomous snake slithered into my bedroom. I immediately had Shinzhong take the snake to Pei Wenshuan's study. Pei Wenshuan was fast asleep when the snake, with its flickering tongue, bit him on the big toe. He was once stung by wasps, leaving him with a lingering fear, a sharp pain in his foot. He opened his eyes to see a brightly colored venomous snake coiled around his foot, and he was so frightened that he foamed at the mouth. Before he could even cry for help, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. By the time the servants found him, he was deeply poisoned. The army doctor, Zhong Bo, diagnosed that his life could only be saved by amputating the big toe. With a grand wave of my hand, I ordered Zhong Bo to chop off his entire lower leg. During the amputation, Pei Wenshuan was awakened by the pain, struggling to prevent Zhong Bo from treating him. "Husband, you've been poisoned severely. If you don't sacrifice this lower leg, your life will be in danger." I earnestly tried to persuade him, but Pei Wenshuan wouldn't listen at all, struggling desperately. I impatiently forced an entire packet of soft tendon powder down his throat, rendering him unable to move, only able to consciously experience the entire process of losing a lower leg. By the time Pei Wenshuan woke up from his coma, news had already spread from the palace that the crown prince's consort's investiture ceremony had concluded, and the prime minister's daughter had officially entered the Eastern Palace. Pei Yangran still planned to use the Shun family's name to sneak into the palace and take a chance at the subsequent concubine selection banquet. Her carriage had just traveled halfway when I sent someone in Pei Wenshuan's name to kidnap Pei Yangran from the carriage, and directly sent her to the home of Pei Wenshuan's notorious crony, the Vice Minister of War, Liang Han, to be his 13th beautiful concubine. Pei Wenshuan just woke up. I then eagerly invited Liang Han to the residence to reminisce. "Brother Wenshuan, you are truly righteous, actually sending such a beautiful young maiden to me. It's just that the little beauty is a bit too fiery, and her mind doesn't seem to be working too well, actually talking nonsense. Saying she's your own daughter." Pei Wenshuan was utterly bewildered. He leaned weakly against the headboard. "Brother Liang, what do you mean? When have I ever sent you any woman?" Liang Han was also dumbfounded. He described the matter from beginning to end. When Pei Wenshuan heard Liang Han say the woman's name was Pei Yangran, he roared incredulously towards the door. He ordered the servant to quickly bring Pei Yangran over. The servant hurriedly replied, "Sir, Miss Yangran left the mansion privately while you were unconscious and has not returned." "Ah!" Pei Wenshuan let out a beast-like roar, then he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted straight away. Liang Han was splattered with blood, shouting bad luck, and cursing as he flung his sleeves, leaving the minister's residence. After a long while, Pei Wenshuan slowly woke up and, at the first moment, hobbled into my courtyard with his crutch. "You poisonous woman, what exactly did you do while I was unconscious? Why has Yangran become Liang Han's concubine?" He glared at me, his eyes bloodshot, demanding an explanation. I raised an eyebrow nonchalantly, turning a page of my book. "Since you're so curious, you can always go to the Liang residence yourself and ask your good niece." Pei Wenshuan was breathing heavily, his jaw clenched so tightly it formed a square. Having lived 2 lives, I understood him better than anyone. In his eyes, after losing her innocence, Pei Yangran was nothing more than a completely useless pawn. Now he's just bluffing in front of me, trying to see if I know more of the inside story. As expected, seeing that I had no other reaction, he glared at me venomously before turning and limping away. The next day, Pei Wenshuan took 1,000 taels of silver notes to the Liang residence. Pei Yangran was thus completely abandoned. Emerging from the Liang residence, Pei Wenshuan went to Bailu Academy, where a Nyan was, Nyana, Your sister was framed by that poisonous woman and became a concubine in the Liang household. You must study hard and climb the ranks as quickly as possible using the Shen family's power, so you can avenge your sister. And this leg of mine was also harmed by that poisonous woman. Your father really can't wait a moment longer, wishing he could kill that poisonous woman immediately. But for your future, your father can only grit his teeth and endure it. And Nyan bowed in response with a calm demeanor. Having received Nyan's guarantee, Pei Wenshuan then dragged his crippled leg and left the academy. Cloud Jiao, the mistress in the other courtyard, missed her precious daughter so much that her heart was breaking after not seeing her for a long time. She sent many letters to Pei Wenshuan, asking to see Pei Yangran. Pei Wenshuan himself became disabled, and his daughter was sent to be a concubine. Losing all face, he wanted to hide it from Cloud Jiao, so he kept delaying, only telling Cloud Jiao to wait patiently. Seeing Pei Wen constantly declining, Yun Jiao sensed something was wrong. Fearing that Pei Wenshuan and Pei Yangran were becoming estranged from her, so she made it clear in the letter that if Pei Wenshuan didn't bring his daughter to see her again, she would personally make a scene at the minister's residence. Touching Pei Wenshuan's empty trouser leg, Yun Jiao couldn't help but wail loudly. She was unwilling to believe that the plan she had painstakingly devised would actually backfire on the man she loved. When she cried until she lost her voice, she finally remembered to ask why she hadn't heard any news of Pei Yangran entering the Eastern Palace. Pei Wenshuan revealed the truth with a worried look. Yun Jiao learned that her precious daughter